everyone, welcome back to IB Talks. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my experience with the IB Chemistry IA, which is ultimately the IA which I faced the most failures in, and ultimately the IA where I had probably the most major challenges to overcome. Like physics and maths were like itty bitty challenges, but many of them, whilst chemistry IA was just like boom, okay, this completely failed, you need to completely start again kind of challenges. So yeah, we're gonna talk about that today. My chemistry IA is also somewhat different because for my physics and maths IA, I was kind of a trailblazer. I was creating my own path and my own ideas kind of thing. I was thinking outside the box and all that crap. So the hard part was that I didn't have a simple guide to follow. Everything I was doing was new, and that's what made it difficult. Oh my god, in comparison to my chemistry IA, I just kept freaking failing, man. That was the main issue. My experiments failed, I couldn't think of ideas, I was rushed for time. I felt completely lost at some points. And eventually, after a few failures, I just ended up doing a really simple IA. It wasn't new or original or anything like that, but because this one was simple, I was able to go into a lot of depth with it, and I was able to spin in some of my math tricks. But the main part, what made my chemistry IAs good was because it was so simple, I was able to go into a lot of depth. When I read through my physics and maths IAs, there are mistakes throughout it, and so many issues that people on the internet still ask me about. I had an issue with my math IA, which instead of actually doing a calculation for a log value, I just copied and pasted the values on top, so it didn't make any sense. I've gotten more than a few messages demanding explanation for this mistake, so yeah, sorry about that. When I read through my chemistry IA, I can't find a single mistake. Everything is fine, everything's perfect in it basically, and that was simply because I knew, because of the fact that my IA was so simple, I needed to make sure that every freaking word was perfect. And I did manage to get a decent grade, which I was so grateful for, because I honestly did not expect getting such a high grade, because I honestly thought it was too simple to get a high grade. So I did manage to get a 7, yeah! I didn't get perfect marks like I did for my physics and maths. I got 21 out of 24, which is just enough to get a 7. And honestly, I'm so lucky that I did get a 7 for that IA. I got a 7 in HL Chem, but I was literally right on the grade boundary. If I had gotten one less point than that, then I would have gotten a 6. So let's get into the story of my chemistry IA. If you want to see me going through my chemistry IA, you can do so in this video over here. Hopefully it pops up if Sinead editing this remembers. Okay, let's start from the start. I first initially wanted to do the winkler experiment. Where basically you test the oxygen levels in a river, and I wanted to go to a river in Jakarta and get samples for the oxygen levels and see how that changes down the river. I was way too interested in this IA, because at this point I was thinking about going into environmental engineering, and I freaking biked all around my neighborhood on my bike looking for rivers. I would park my bike and then run over to a riverside and just inspect the river, and have my fucking phone and taking pictures and zooming into different parts of the river. Because you know, you don't really notice rivers when you're in a car all the time. So when we're driving around places and I saw a river, I'd be wait, stop, let me inspect this river. I did all this freaking research on freaking rivers and oxygen in rivers and fish and I don't even know. I was in such a rabbit hole because I was so obsessed with freaking rivers and the oxygen levels in rivers. But eventually I had to negate this idea and move on to something else, mainly for two reasons. One, I live in Jakarta, all of the rivers are freaking polluted and disgusting. They're all just garbage and somewhat poisonous. Two, after a lot of searching and trying to get it to happen, we didn't actually have the chemicals needed to do the titration that I wanted to do, which was unfortunate and really annoying. But I also heard that titrations are really tedious and annoying to do, so I'm not complaining. So yeah, after a few weeks of being I'm gonna do the winkler experiment, I had to scrap that idea. And guess what? It actually wasn't a waste of time, because guess what came up on my exam? A question, how specific is this? On the freaking winkler experiment. A freaking question about the winkler experiment and biological oxygen demand was freaking on my exam, and I knew exactly how to answer it because I did this whole freaking IA on it. So the second IA that I tried to do was on buffers. So a bit of quick revision for you. A buffer is a liquid which resists a change in pH. So if you add a bit of acid, then the pH will stay the same because the buffer is going to eat up the acid, and if you add a little base, then the pH is probably going to stay the same because the buffer is going to eat up the base. That's basically what it is. And so I wanted to do this IA on buffers that was based off another person's IA. I wanted to like build on top of it and trying to do just like a similar thing that she did, but with different types of buffers. At the time, this sounded like the most amazing idea ever. Like, I was so excited to do this IA. Like, I did not understand acid-base chemistry until I had to do all the research needed for this IA, and eventually I came to understand it, and I was just super psyched because I was like, hey, this is gonna help me for my exams because I'm gonna freaking smash acid-based chemistry when it comes around. But I actually ran into like a lot of problems on the way, but I didn't end up doing it for a few reasons. Guys, I just saw a tourist running through our village. You guys aren't allowed here. Coronavirus. Oh my god, okay, I'm gonna go on a rant, but never mind. So the first problem that I ran into was trying to figure out how to make buffers. This was an issue because I realized how freaking unskilled I was at like actually doing chemistry experiments. So I don't want to like name names or like blame anyone, but I had like a teacher in the first year of IB which literally taught us nothing. So we didn't have any lab skills and we didn't know how to do like anything in the lab basically. So figuring out how to like freaking just mix stuff and measure things correctly, that was like such a challenge for me. And like knowing how to use a volumetric flask properly, that was so freaking difficult, man. My teacher in first year was somewhat incompetent, so I'm gonna blame him. I should just blame myself, take accountability. He was such a nice dude, I really love him, he was great, but we didn't learn anything for the lab. The second problem was because I live in a third world country, a lot of our chemicals were just a bit dodgy, that's all I'm gonna say. Like, they were just dodgy chemicals. Like, when we tried to make esters and like, you know, you try to make like the smell of a banana and stuff, it just did not smell like a banana. Like, you had to put the chemical like this close up into your nose in order to smell it, if you know what I mean. Like, the chemicals I had to settle with weren't super optimal because like our school just wasn't stocked up in like supplies. Eventually I did get over problems 1 and 2. I figured out how to like mix things and measure things just after a bunch of googling and stuff like that. You know, Google, our best friend in IB. I figured out how to make the most out of our dodgy chemicals so that I could like make my solutions. All I needed to do was do the experiment. But eventually problem 3 just rendered my experiment completely useless. And the problem was similar to problem 2. I desperately needed to use like a really accurate pH meter to measure the pH. And the pH meter just didn't work. Like, that's just what happened. Like, I would have been perfectly fine if our school had like a well-working pH meter. But the pH meter was just dodgy. It would just go up and down and just didn't make any sense. It's either that or the buffers were just crap, because when I would just put in like a little itty bit of acid, then the pH meter would go up. So yeah, that was very sad. I learned how to use like the magnetic mixer. That was like freaking awesome, but I just couldn't figure out a way to get good data. And if you can't get good data, you don't have a chemistry experiment. You have nothing if you don't have good data. As soon as I figured out that I couldn't get good data on my IA, I scrapped it. And I would recommend this for all of you. By good data, I don't mean that it proves your hypothesis. By good data, I just mean like numbers that you can work with. If you can't get good data, bye, move on, go to another thing. I literally wasted 2 weeks and so much energy on this IA. It was very depressing to move on, but you have to do what you have to do. So essentially, by this point, I have 1 week to finish my chemistry IA. So what do? Eventually, I decided on the topic of zinc electrolysis. This idea being a super unoriginal idea that I got from my friend who got from the teacher. So my friend over here was doing like a copper electrolysis where he was testing whether different concentrations of copper would affect the mass plated on the electrodes. Don't worry about it, doesn't matter. So I basically went up to him and was like, hey, I literally like just fucked up like my experiment real bad. Can you help me? And he said I could easily do an electrolysis IA just using a different metal. And I looked into this electrolysis thing and I actually found it like genuinely interesting because it was using and applying Faraday's laws of electrolysis, which I'm a physicist, girl. I love physics. I learned about electricity. I learned about Faraday and all that stuff. I really admire Faraday. So everything about electrolysis and electroplating and all that stuff, I just got it. Like, I just got it. Like, I just really understood it because I had that base knowledge in physics. So I decided, and my teacher was completely okay with this, that I was gonna do an electrolysis, but with zinc instead of copper. Oh my god. Okay, the sun's going down, but we're going to power through. Should I use my phone? Like, no, that's a bad idea. We're just gonna have to bear with the bad lighting. By the way, my teacher was completely okay with this because we did have different independent variables. He was doing the mass of copper and concentration. I was doing zinc and the mass over time. Yeah, if your teacher's like whining and complaining to you about how you can't do like a similar IA to your friend, as long as you have different variables, then it should be fine. We literally had 4 people doing electrolysis IAs. Electrolysis IAs are like somewhat easy to do because they're kind of hard to fuck up. Titrations are hard and we have really bad materials, so if you can do an electrolysis IA, you should do it. Fun if you understand the physics behind it, if you understand electricity and stuff like that. You should read up on like electricity theory, but I would highly recommend it because when you're doing an electrolysis, like you don't have to mix things together, you just have to like do the experiment. It's like really fun, honestly. And it was also really nice because we had like 4 people doing electrolysis IA, so we were all able to like help each other and stuff like that. And because I was like the physicist in the group, the rest of them were doing bio, I knew how to like use circuits and stuff like that. That's the one thing. If you don't know how to use circuits, then you have to learn how to use circuits. So I would like help people like organize their circuits well, and then my friend who already knew more, he could explain the theory to me, and it was just all around good vibes because we were all like doing similar things and helping each other. So yeah, I would recommend like doing similar IAs to your friends because then you can help each other and that's fun. You don't need to view the IB as a competition between your friends. It's much funner to view it as like you and your friends working together against the world or whatever. Yeah, so I particularly find this thing interesting because I began reading into like Faraday's laws of electrolysis, which this thing is based off of, and I got really excited because I realized that I could derive an equation that predicts how the mass of these electrodes change over time by like measuring the current and stuff like that, and then I could compare that to what actually happened in real life. So I was doing like experimental results, and then I was doing like theoretical results, and I was comparing whether they were the same or not. And the most amazing thing is that they were literally like the same. Like they were like the same. This is what was really exciting for me. My experimental results and the theoretical results lined up so much, I was shocked. This is another reason why I would recommend doing electrolysis IA. The theory on the electrolysis is so spot on. Freaking pH curves, man, it's just like, you can't be accurate with that shit, like no. And like titrations, right? Like it's like there's so much error in it. But then in electrolysis, if you do it right, you can get some pretty accurate stuff. So yeah, I thought I was the coolest person ever because I was able to derive an equation that predicted what was happening. I was like, guys, where's my Nobel Prize? Hello! So yeah, I basically just got to work on this experiment. And through a lot of hard work and long hours, I was able to power through, and I actually got this IA done within a week. But that's because I was working like so freaking hard. It was pretty much the most productive week of my life. Like I look back to this week with so much freaking nostalgia because that was like the most productive and focused I've ever been. Like I was headstrong, down, doing nothing except for thinking, doing, and writing about this IA for like a week straight. Like I didn't like think about anything else. Like when I think about working efficiently and working effectively, I think back to this week and think about how like, you know, those were like the glory days, and now I just sit on my phone and watch YouTube all day. Like I spent so much time like creating this mad circuit setup because I understood from my physics training. So I had this mad circuit setup that I'm like so proud of. I had that ammeter running, I had the voltmeter running, I had like the things in solutions like under clamp stands which were able to like really accurately hold the crocodile clip in a position so that the electrodes were like in the right spot, and I just had to like lift it up, lift it out, take them out, put them out, weigh in them. I don't know, it was just like magical. Like I created an assembly line. Like, you know, it took me like a good few hours, maybe 3 hours in the morning to like actually set up and look good because I had to keep testing things, trying things out, moving this to that thing. Oh my god, the ammeter doesn't work anymore, whatever, I gotta get a new one. This thing broke, I like dropped a plate or something, a test tube exploded somewhere else, I had to like go and help my friend clean up. So it took like 3 hours to like set up, but eventually once I had that started, it was so easy to like leverage off of. I remember on like a few days, I would wake up at 6 a.m. to like bike to school, and then I'd work from like 6:30 to like 12 p.m. on this experiment. That was for like 2 or 3 days because I really wanted to get the experiment done. Eventually, I just powered through and I finished the experiment in maybe 3 days. I can't remember, but it was like only a few days. And I was like so proud of myself. And then I just began the write-up. And because my IA was so simple and I already had a plan beforehand, and I already understood like the theory behind it from like Faraday's laws of electrolysis or whatever, it was actually really easy to write up. And I spent most of the time like trying to structure everything, draw nice diagrams, make everything look good, trying to organize everything in like a nice cohesive structure because I knew I had to make it really like pristine. It wasn't like a particularly difficult IA. I remember adding like so much structure and organization into my IA. Everything was like either in like bullet points, tables, had a diagram next to it, had like this visualization, had like this picture image, had like this label or whatever, because I knew that I needed to like put all of that effort in because it was so simple. And eventually I got it done. I was so proud of it. Like I knew I was pressed for time. I knew I like had some like rough failures, but like I didn't let that get me down. Like I didn't let the fact that like I had so many issues and problems to deal with, like getting my way. I just powered through. I like self-doubted myself. Of course, I didn't know if I can do it or not, but I decided that, like, you know what, I need to get this 7 in chemistry. I'm gonna power through. And yeah, that's basically my story of my IB chemistry IA. I hope you found this valuable. Some key messages is that if you fail, if you have a problem, that's normal. You just gotta power through. You gotta find another solution. Don't like blame the universe for cursing you with this problem. Take accountability for that and try to figure out an answer. You might not, you might have to scrap it and think of something new, but that's part of the experience. I had to do that twice, so yeah. If you're reading someone else's IA, like, you don't know what work went behind it. You don't need to judge yourself for it. You don't need to like think that like you will never be able to make such a good assignment, because you don't know that until you've tried. If you've tried once, then that's not enough. You gotta try again. It just like benefited me so much. It just taught me that, like, you know, if you fail a million times, then that's fine, because every time you fail, you learn from it. And eventually, if you like power through enough, then you can eventually come out with like a good thing, you know? So yeah, I wish you luck with your IAs. I wish you luck with whatever you're doing in the IB, and it's about nighttime right now, as you can see, as my lighting has just completely gone away. So yeah, I'll see you in my next video, and that's all for now. Bye!